In Rogue Trader, when it comes to the most overpowered tier 1 archetype, that title for damage goes to Bladedancer. Bladedancer is one of those things where it is a clear sign of DLC power creep and nothing else even comes close to it. The core early features that you get is Blade Dance. The Blade Dancer makes 2 plus agility bonus divided by 4 melee attacks against random targets, including allies adjacent to the Blade Dancer, each dealing 50% of their normal damage. Blade Dance is a melee burst attack that does not count towards the attack limit per turn. This ability can be used with a sword equipped. If 2 swords are equipped, the Blade Dancer makes 1 plus agility bonus divided by 4 attacks with each one. This is an incredibly overpowered ability because it gives you a lot more attack economy. It also builds very nicely into other origins like Navy Officer because it can give you additional attacks when you score crits, and it can also be very effective with tier 2 archetypes like Executioner. The rank 3 ability is another one of those OP game-breaking talents, which is Death from Above. The Blade Dancer leaps into the air and lands on a selected cell. Upon landing, they deal agility bonus plus weapon skill bonus damage to all adjacent enemies. This leap can be made to any unoccupied cell within 3 cell radius in the Blade Dancer's line of sight. The movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity. The Blade Dancer cannot jump to a cell that is inaccessible in combat. This ability can use multiple times per turn, but each use requires a charge to be spent and inflicts +1 stack of short of breath debuff on the Blade Dancer till the start of the next turn. The Blade Dancer gains +1 charge of this ability each time they kill a target, excluding kills made by this ability. Incredibly overpowered, will stack up very quickly, and again works very nicely with all the tier 2s. And again, Navy Officer, the offhand attacks that it can generate on crit to get kills will actually generate charges, so you can use Death from Above to gain Death from Above charges. The heroic is Death Waltz. The Blade Dancer uses Death from Above against a target enemy without spending a charge. Immediately making a melee attack against the enemy, the Blade Dancer repeats this combination up to 2 plus agility bonus divided by 3 times against random available targets. If it is impossible to use Death from Above, the Blade Dancer only makes a melee attack against a random available target. It can be the same enemy. Now, this thing again has some insanely overpowered upgrades. One of them will add agility based damage to all of your Death from Aboves. Before it was adding agility damage to everything, which made an agility Blade Dancer exceptionally powerful. In this case, it also has upgrades that can armor strip enemies more than operatives can. So yes, Blade Dancer is exceptionally powerful. The skills that Blade Dance has available to it are Athletics, which is strength based, Demolitions, which is agility based, Medicae, which is int based, Awareness, which is perception based, and Corrals, which is toughness based. Now, Blade Dancer can be exceptionally powerful, and it also can be a great utility. Naturally, agility is one of your main things to level, and perception is going to be something that you want to level, even if you have to take a characteristic training. But Medicae can actually scale from your weapon skill. Medicae is going to be vital to a Blade Dancer because it can be used to scale crit damage with this build, and if you go into the archetype Executioner, you can also use this to further increase your damage as well as your armor. You can then also use it to increase your health. Toughness can be used to restore HP, but you tend to be able to drop toughness by going into Executioner, but that is going to be an option that is available to you. There are many talents available to you in Blade Dancer, and I won't read off each of them, but I will talk about some of the important ones. Death Warden is going to be one of those ones you want to get early because it changes Medicae to be based on weapon skill if it is higher than your intelligence, and you also do additional critical damage based on your Medicae. So this is something that's going to scale with you throughout the game, and it's going to be very good at when you receive buffs. Another really good talent is going to be Blood Rush. This is going to be an upgrade to an ability we'll talk about in a little bit, but what this do is it will generate MP for you. Dance Partners is another great talent. As long as the Blade Dance has 2 weapons equipped, the Blade Dancer's weapon skill is increased by your agility bonus. So this is going to be very good for a trauma-based build. A Death World build using Facing the End and Wounded Beast will stack exceptional willpower and agility. That agility will then also become a weapon skill. That weapon skill will become Medicae. That Medicae will become HP, crit damage, and damage, possibly even armor. So it is an exceptionally powerful setup, and it's the one that I use to solo clear the game, and it's also the one that I use for the Grim Dark challenge when I set a speedrun record. Another one that is very useful, especially if you go into Executioner, is Sweeping Motions. The Blade Dancer's melee area attacks cost 1 AP less, but no less than 1, so this means that you can get 1 AP melee areas. A potential one, balancing on the edge, can be very useful if you're going for a trauma build to be able to get off some more heroic acts during that turn. This was exceptionally good for a solo gameplay, but of a full party, it's not as required. Facing the end, if you're going to be using traumas or injuries, which you will naturally get anyway, this is going to be a very good one for building weapon skill and agility. Again, agility is something that you will use for a lot of damage, and if you take Drukhari weapons with the finesse talent upgrade, you can actually scale your melee damage from agility instead of strength. This means you can focus on weapon skill, agility, and perception and make an exceptionally powerful build. Whilst not one I suggest to take early, late game you can take stuff like Guillotine, which Death from Above deals double damage to enemies that have less than 50% wounds. This is going to be very good to use with the ability Acrobatic Artistry, because as you reverse your jumps that you have done from your Death from Aboves, you're likely to be going back up against enemies that are under half health, so this will double the damage, confirming the kill, though it's not the best early game because chances are you don't want to be killing with those Death from Aboves. Grand Performance is the upgrade to Captive Audience, but it's incredibly powerful because it lowers enemies' armor. It just gives them reductions to armor, dodge, and parry, and this will scale with your agility bonus. So again, exceptionally powerful tool that is in the Bladedancer's arsenal. There are going to be some universal upgrades that you have access to here as well. This will include Rising Tempo, which will give you damage boost as you're attacking. Blade in his hands will allow you to do additional percentage damage based on your agility, but it's a little bit lower than some of the other things that you can be picking up. Duelist will also give you a nice weapon skill bonus against enemies armed with melee weapons, so you'll be able to focus them down. Because the way the debuff works from Death from Above, you're also going to want to consider taking talents like Dueling Mastery to make sure you have high parry. Luckily, swords naturally increase your parry, so you shouldn't be having too many issues here. Escape Artist, whenever the Bladedancer dodges an attack made by an enemy who has attacked them for the first time, Bladedancer gets one charge of Death from Above. The other is Spinning Blades. Whenever the Bladedancer parries an attack, the number of attacks made by the next Bladedancer is increased by 1. This effect stacks up to 2 times, which is based on your agility bonus. These skills are more valuable when you're not using a Grand Strategist and enemies actually get to take a turn, but if you're playing hyper aggressively, chances are enemies don't get to take a turn, and you will one-turn them because Bladedancer is so overpowered. When talking about Bladedancer abilities, Blood Oath is going to be your best one, so this one will take 5 plus Bladedancer's level divided by 2 wounds to use, but the Bladedancer will target an enemy bound to dispatch their mark. Their Bladedancer's next attack against their selected enemy cannot be dodged or parried, so exceptionally good on higher difficulties. If this attack kills the target, the Bladedancer regains 5 plus 2 times toughness bonus wounds and gains 1 AP along with an additional attack this turn, as again, Bladedancer once again breaking attack economy. The ability can be used multiple times per round, but the additional AP and attacks is only once per round. With the Blood Rush update, this gives you a lot of movement, and it can be used for something like Skirmisher's Boots because it will also proc based on that because your self-damage counts as an attack. Because when you use a lot of Death from Above, you're going to end up with very low dodge. Acrobatic Artistry is very good to reset your movement back to the start of the turn. So you'll repeat all of your Death from Aboves in reverse, but you'll end up getting back into cover. That way you can use cover to survive ranged attacks, and if melees rush you, you've still got your parry. Currently, Veil of Blades, which is to be able to parry ranged attacks, is bugged since the 1.5 update. I do not know if the DLC on June 11th will fix this. I hope so, but currently Veil of Blades doesn't work, so I wouldn't recommend it. Captive Audience is a very strong ability because the Bladedancer's next attack inflicts bleeding on agility bonus plus weapon skill bonus on all targets hit. The targets must pass a toughness resistance test with a -16 penalty or become immobilized one round. All enemies immobilized by a Captive Audience count as full cover for the Bladedancer. So this is very good at sweeping motions to hit many enemies or even your Blade Dance, but you can also use the Grand Performance upgrade to really cripple enemies. Oath of Vengeance is one that I like to use. The Bladedancer selects an ally. Until the end of combat, attacks made by the Bladedancer against enemies who have already attacked that ally gain 30% critical hit chance and 26% critical damage. The reason I don't really use Oath of Vengeance is because you will tend to kill enemies before they even have a chance to act, especially if you have a Grand Strategist in your party. This might be something you would consider if you were not using a Grand Strategist, but because Grand Strategist makes the game easier, if you're going to use an OP archetype like Bladedancer, why wouldn't you pair it with the archetype for Grand Strategist? Now, when we talk about the upgrades, my favorite two are going to be Upgrade 2 and Upgrade 3. Upgrade 2 gives you 4 additional charges of Death from Above until the end of combat. Death from Above also deals agility bonus additional damage. Currently in patch 1.5, this applies to all damage. We'll have to see if the DLC fixes that, but it is only meant to be the death from above. The upgrade 3 until the end of combat, strikes made by the Bladedancer, including the attacks made as part of death vaults, reduce enemies' weapon skill and decrease enemy armor and dodge by agility bonus divided by 2%. These penalties stack. Yeah, exceptionally powerful. The more attacks you make, the more you weaken things. This is an absolute boss killer. Now, you can pick upgrade 1, which the cost of Bladedancer abilities cost reduced is half. And upon using Death Vaults after killing an enemy, the Bladedancer gains 3% dodge till the end of combat, stacks up to agility bonus times. Not as powerful as obviously upgrade 2 and upgrade 3. Now, if we talk about origins, you're going to want to focus on melee origins, which means Astra Militarum Command and Commissar aren't going to be two you want to pick. Crime Lord is actually a perception weapon skill based origin, so this one is actually really strong for it, and Surefire Plan can be used in all forms of it, though the non-damaging ability to target enemies, chances are you won't use that with the Int, but that doesn't really matter. Minister and Priest is exceptionally powerful with this. You can go with this for either a Arc Militant or an Executioner, because Flimsing Flame will add burning damage to your criticals, so it is very strong for that, and it is one to consider. It is one that is going to be a prime candidate for a DLC run. It is a Bladedancer Priest. Navioso is another exceptionally powerful attack, because every time you crit, you get an offhand attack. So this means it will be very good to play a Bladedancer Arc Militant with offhand burst-only pistols, or even just going Executioner to just stack lots of attacks. It will also just work for Arc Militant because you can use sweeping motions and then your criticals will trigger an offhand attack. Currently on patch 1.5, area attacks that crit with your main hand will trigger offhand attacks. We'll have to see if that remains to be seen. Noble doesn't really add anything to any archetype, and it isn't one I suggest, so it's just a really bad and underpowered origin at the moment. The only way you can really use it is offset, and even then it's a +5 bonus to a characteristic, so not exceptionally good. Please buff Noble. Sanction Psyker, OP, Pyromancy is very good for it, but the actual best origin is Biomancy. Biomancy because obviously you get Iron Arm, and you can add Toxin to your attacks, which means that you can use 4 swords with Executioner archetype, and you don't need to worry about going in for Drukhari weapons, but you can always dip into Pyromancy and Psionic powers. Divination and Telepathy don't give as much to Bladedancer as the other schools. Arbitrator is another one you can use because you can use a sword and a shield, and it's good to get some of those little extra ones, though is usable because there is a unique pet that will blade dance when you blade dance if you use the Cybermastiff. Not one I'd recommend. As for homeworlds, if you're making a trauma-based build, Deathworld is the absolute meta pick, so it is one to consider. You do get a companion that comes with Voidborn, but is probably one of the worst options that you can get for it, mostly because it doesn't add too much and it is intelligence-based, and you don't really use intelligence when you go into Executioner or when you use Bladedancer. Hiveworld, again, because you're not really using guns, it's not going to be one that will benefit you that much. Though Forge World will be a very good one for you, because no matter what you go for, Forge World will do a lot for it. Imperial World is another one you can just get a +10 bonus, and you can also do Doing My Part to reduce the AP cost, so it's just one that if you haven't really thought too much, it is an okay option. Fortress World is also very good because Never Stop Shooting applies to melee attacks, so it's another way to generate more attack economy, especially if you're looping extra turns. As for an example build, we will use Kibella. Now, what Kibella has here is she's gone into a Medicaid for her rank 2, because this is going to be something we need to use, and up to Death Warden to take first. And again, we take Death Warden because this will increase our Medicaid based on our weapon skill, and it will increase our critical damage. Now, rank 5, I take Dueling Mastery. This is because the stacks from Death from Above will give us Short of Breath, which will debuff our Strength, Perception, and Dodge. So this way, it counteracts that. I then take Weapon Skill increases. We get Blood Oath as our first ability, more Medicaid, more weapon skill, then Blood Rush to give MP on use of Blood Oath, because you can use that multiple times to stack it up. I then start taking Awareness. Now for Kibella, I've taken Jinx here. You can also take her Crimson Thing, but this is a common talent, so you won't be having that in your regular Bladedancer, but this will be an open slot for a common talent. Take the Death Waltz upgrade too, because like I said, to get those extra additional charges. I have Escape Artist here, but that's because I was playing without a Grand Strategist. Facing the End will also be a very good option here if you're taking any injuries. If you find you take too many injuries or traumas using Kibella or your own Bladedancer, taking Facing the End here will be a great upgrade. Acrobatic Archery will be the one to keep us safe. Dance Partners, especially if you have Facing the End, will turn any of that agility that you gain from Facing the End into more weapon skill, so it will counteract negatives. More agility, more awareness. I take Characteristic Training Perception because Kibella's Assassin origin doesn't naturally get Perception, so I want Perception to be able to level up Perception. I've taken Guillotine guillotine here, but again, this would be another great option to take sweeping motions, especially if you want to go into the archetype executioner. Sweeping motions will actually be incredibly meta here. Then the last one, I would take the upgrade 3 along with my 2, because then that means defaults will be a great debuffing tool. So let's take this into combat and show off what it does. So my Bladedancer's taken a few attacks, and my officer is going to go before Cabela. So I'm going to use move to get Cabela into position after giving her some officer buffs, and then I'm going to bring it down to give her an extra turn. So with how little AP she has at 2, you're going to see how much she can really do here. So she starts off with just using Death from Above, and she gets 3 kills, which instantly procs a heroic action. When I said that this class is absolutely broken, you can see what I mean when it's absolutely broken. Even when you're at a lower level than enemies, you can jump over obstacles to use stuff like Death Waltz here and for your Death from Above. Now, all of these Death Waltzes are going to chain because I got 3 kills on a single Death from Above, and that cost me 0 AP, by the way. I've still not used any of my AP or any of my normal attack actions. Because of my upgrades, I now have 5 charges of Death from Above, so I can just move and kill enemies. I'm going to use my Blood Oath here to target the enemy to move close and attack it, and then that gives me extra AP, and I have made a kill. So I still have 2, and I still have my attack action. Funny enough, this is on unfair. I only play on unfair, and all my opinions are based on playing on unfair. There are people that will have different opinions to me based on playing on lower difficulties, but as you can see, yeah, Bladedancer is insanely strong, and all those kills there, I still have over 5 charges of Death from Above, so just look at me go. This is how overpowered Bladedancer is, and anyone that says Bladedancer is weak probably just hasn't leveled them correctly and isn't supporting them correctly with just very simple officer buffs. Yeah, Cabela's doing a lot. All she really got up here was a voice of command and a air of authority, but just look at her go. Just wipes the entire map and wins the encounter. That's what Bladedancer does. I'm Revan619, and I will see you all on June 11th for the update for Rogue Trader. Bye for now.